It can feel from the outside, it's a tough industry because there are a lot of scams as well, a lot of failed projects. It feels risky, but it's also important to experiment and to learn. And depending on the business case, then there are different ways to engage.
My guest today is Jerome Rousselot, CEO and founder of Jita Digital. Jita Digital offers strategic advice and security audits to fintech startups, businesses, and asset managers. Their clients include Digital Gold, Ref Finance, and Q.org. Jerome, it's great to have you on the podcast today.
Likewise, great to meet you.
So, crypto, blockchain, and Web3, what was it that pulled you into this ecosystem?
So when I was at the time in 2013, I was in Switzerland. I had finished my PhD. I was working in electronics, a large semiconductor company, and I wanted to move to London. And one of my friends had joined a hardware startup, and they pivoted to hardware Bitcoin wallet and software Bitcoin wallet. So I was very intrigued by this. I read the white paper. It all made sense to me. It seemed like simple technology, relatively simple, and with great, huge potential value. So at the time, I was doing video, secure video, which is very complex, and then everything gets streamed online. So the business model and so on. I was wondering of the complexity and then the value. And here we had a simpler technology with higher upside, let's say, and great potential for the world. So I ended up moving to London to create the London branch of the startup there.
And so you did that then for a number of years and created the London branch. But then how did it sort of evolve, and where did Jita Digital come from in all of this?
Great question. So this industry was very different at the time. And we had a difficult bear market, 2014, 2015. And after a while, I thought, well, if I'm already in there and I believe in the potential of this technology, I could try to build something myself. And so I created in 2015 Jita Digital for blockchain microfinance. So that was the concept I wanted to apply blockchain to. So I wanted to use Bitcoin to move actually value between, for instance, UK and Indonesia as an international remittance system. So the microfinance is a very complex topic, and if you combine very complicated things, Bitcoin in terms of regulations and so on, plus the micro lending and then the the loan management, and then the unit cost, all of this doesn't work really well together. But we built a proof of concept. There was interest, it was exciting. We learned a lot. Then we pivoted to offer 3 services: strategy, product development, and security audits for blockchain startups, so that these companies would maybe be regulated if needed, but we would focus ourselves on the technology side.
And so with the microfinance, as you're saying, there was a lot of kind of complexities with it. Whilst on the surface, of course, cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin are great for remittance payments because of the ease with which something can cross borders. No doubt there's a lot more detail beyond just the actual technology capabilities when it comes to building a business around that.
Absolutely. So the technology may allow you to cross jurisdictions, but the jurisdictions still apply. A lot of people actually still now, 10 years later, almost still struggle with that. But if you build a business, it's a legal entity incorporated in a jurisdiction, and then if it operates in multiple jurisdictions, you have to comply with all the rules in every jurisdiction. So it's a compliance nightmare, or paradise if you love compliance, if you're a compliance officer. But for a startup, it's very difficult, especially as in a new topic, in a new field. The regulator doesn't know what to do. It's not the biggest issue until it becomes big enough. And so you just lose time. You do meetings and meetings if you're lucky and you can get the meetings, but then in the end, if it's not big enough for them, then they will just not decide, and so you can lose years easily. So that this was our problem at the time, and I quickly understood that this was going nowhere for me. It was very bad. Maybe there is good application for this blockchain microfinance for the world, unconditional cash transfers, this kind of things, and UBI. Now we talk about that also in our advanced economies, right? Universal basic income, in a way, is the same, except you don't cross borders. But this is not good for a business case. For a startup, according to me. And later, so we pivoted, we offered this services strategy, which blockchain to build on, what to put on chain, what in the back end, what makes sense or not, and then help to build that, or to audit offer security audit services and smart contracts for the tech startups that build their tech themselves. But then we had actually the same issue again. We had some clients who would start, raise some funding, build a proof of concept with us, and then stop after 3 months, 6 months, because now they're talking with regulator, and then they had another meeting, and then suddenly a regulator wants something else. Suddenly they change their mind, and you can go ahead. So we worked with very interesting teams, very interesting startups, like Texture Capital in New York, the first dealer broker license in the US to tokenize securities in the US. So we helped them build the proof of concept. They were meeting with SEC, and then they got the license. But the process was a stop and start and stop and start. So that's why now we're actually focusing more on security audits on one hand, and advisory role.
Yes, as you say, this you need to have a lot of time to work with regulators because of, I guess, the complexity of the landscape. And so you've kind of found yourself a good sort of niche now around the security audits, and of course the strategy from associated with this stuff as well. What was it specifically that made the security audits like such a I guess a key area of interest for you and the company there is, and what was it that really, drew you in towards it? Because it's complex, right? It's, it's one thing being able to write smart contracts and so on, but then it's another thing being able to audit them. So what was kind of the journey there?
So my background prepared me to this in a way. So I studied computer engineering. I did a PhD at the PFL in Switzerland in wireless communication protocols and real-time systems. So I spent 8 years in research environments, academic environment, applied research, also working on real-time systems with companies such as Airbus, and fire detection systems with Siemens. Wireless fire detection systems were safety critical systems. So all these are real-time stuff that is far away from the web, or used to be very far away, where you need to understand both the hardware and the software, and you really need to understand the whole product. Then I moved on with Marvell Technology, which is a large semiconductor company, where we did hardware software co-design, so designing chips and working with chip designers on the hardware level. So we would have labs and measure the signals, on the chip with this oscillator and all these expensive systems. Then testing the firmware, we're developing C firmware, burning into the chip. So each time you have a bug in that, then you have to do a new tape out and wait 1 month or 2 months to get the chips out of the fab. This is more, the whole world is learning about semiconductors these days, but in the past it was not so widely known. So when doing semiconductor manufacturing, R&D and manufacturing, and then ship to production, there are many very expensive issues. So you better understand the whole system, simulate the system, and identify all bugs. So there are methods to eliminate bugs. So I learned that through extensive practice first in research, academic environment, industrial R&D, then Marvell shipping products. The goal for a smartphone unit was to sell 300 million a year smartphones. So if the chip doesn't make to that volume, it doesn't happen. So you need to make something very very robust that deals. Each time you have if you have a problem that happens once out of 10,000, if you have 300 million chips, your business is dead, basically. So you really have to identify each time you increase your market size by a factor of 10, then you have new type of issues coming up. So when you roll out software, hardware co-design, and then modified by the customer, some brand in China, because they want to cut costs, then you have the complexity that's very large, and you have to be able to find all of the issues in these systems very quickly. And so this was a very good learning experience, let's say. And then, of course, I moved to Mycelium, where we built our own hardware wallet with a custom chip and custom flexible payment card, where we had again embedded software and working with oscilloscope development. And then understanding the whole system, from how chips are made, how the firmware, how the chip starts boots once it receives energy, electricity, voltage, and then how it loads the operating system and how the operating system executes the applications. This gives you the system level understanding. Compiler optimization is something I did as well in a research environment. So as well, that's something that not everybody has experience with. And of course, with Mycelium, then we built the hardware wallet, then the mobile Android wallet, where we had hundreds of thousands of users, some of them running businesses on crypto. So it's something as well, a lot of people work in crypto, but they are not familiar with, not every business in crypto has income streams in crypto and pays salaries in crypto. It's something that we had to do at some point. And because we had people all over the world, and as a mobile wallet, that's what you manage. You have crypto streams. That's what people deposit in your wallet, and that's what you can charge your users. And so you end up managing large amounts of money. Basically, each time you push an Android APK, the new version of the wallet, to hundreds of thousands of users, it's important that the wallet you're pushing, the source code you're pushing there, is exactly the source code that is in GitHub, and not some other version that the person pushing it is prepared in their little corner. These are it's sometimes called the software supply chain issue. So it's all around the software management. So all these issues are very important. And if you push software to hundreds of thousands of people, some of them managing businesses in the wallet, you have like significant amounts of money there. So you need to have the right process in place so that no money is lost. And year after year, I've seen a lot of things, worked with security experts, especially when I was working on digital TV in electronics. So we work on smartphones, so digital TV. So we were making this system on chip devices. Swisscom TV in France, we had all these digital TV boxes with Android TV. So we had the software from Android, the Marvel chips. Then we had some custom chip patches to modify the system. We had a secure boot. All of this helped me build the experience and the industry knowledge, accumulate the industry knowledge to understand what it means to build secure systems and what to look for.
Yeah, and so with that, has it felt somewhat simpler being able to, coming from that background, going into the business of auditing smart contracts, given that you're thinking purely in terms of, the software focus now? When you had some of the previous safety critical systems, you talked about hardware design and these sorts of areas, but no doubt, at least with smart contracts, it's a pure software piece there that you're looking at.
Absolutely, you're right about this. However, software always executes within a context. So this is maybe the key thing to understand. And building yourself this mental model of what is the context of the software being executed helps you understand the risks. And so if you don't understand how a computer works, for instance, if you're on a web page in Google Chrome, then you have a JavaScript VM, so it's a virtual machine. So maybe it's virtual, but it's still a machine. It's still there's a virtual CPU executing all this code and a compiler doing just-in-time compilation. All these advanced technologies now in the browser. But you need to understand, on one hand, what the software is supposed to be doing, what the business expectations in terms of product thinking, what are the different types of users and the access rights, and then you need to understand if the development implemented this correctly. And often this is always a big problem, because during software development, the requirements are not so clear at the beginning, and there's this iterative loop. build, change, build, modify, and sometimes in the software you will see this accumulation of changes. A few things were built and then they remain there, and then we build something else because there is little time left, but then there are some leftover code and things like that. So this is typically something that can be problematic. Then you have the dependencies. So all the libraries some software is built upon. In the specific case of smart contracts, in a way, it's a bit easier because the source code base is smaller. So if you build something with Android, the complexity there is incredible. The amount of source code that you compile to generate an Android image is very difficult to keep track of what's going on there. But if you have smart contracts, the attack surface is smaller. Well, in a way, the whole world can access it, but because you have a simplified machine and you have this cryptography access, because it's designed to be public in the wild, the system has a better, the attack surface is smaller. So you always have to think about all the entry points. And if the system has fewer entry points, then it's easier to enumerate all of them and verify and think about all the entry points, all the bad things that can happen, and check for each of them. Then the other interesting thing, where the complexity happens again in blockchain, is composability. Then you have the smart contract calling each other, and that's quite unique to blockchain, I guess, where yes, you can call that the world computer, maybe, where you do one transaction with a smart contract, but if you interact, for instance, with Uniswap, you will get 5 or 7 different contracts calling each other, and this increases the attack surface again. But every smart contract should have his audit and be a good citizen, and I think thanks to the nature of open source, we built upon the foundation, right? And when something is hacked, everybody sees it, but then everybody learns from it, hopefully. And it may not look like this, and we see big hacks, large numbers of value stolen. But over a period of 12, 24 months, this kind of issues get resolved because the best practice are built in standardized libraries, smart contract libraries, and then the next version hopefully built on that. Recently, there was a hack of Binance, which is very interesting. So this is we don't work only with smart contracts; we also work with new blockchain, L1 or L2. In the case of Binance, the hack recently was they used Cosmos, open source project, to build their own blockchain, the Binance chain, but then they didn't synchronize with upstream source code base. So their code base comes from this repository of source code from Cosmos, but then one of the libraries they used was not secure, and Cosmos deprecated that and recommended another version, another library, let's say. But Binance didn't pay attention to that and used something that nobody else in the Cosmos ecosystem was using. So when you build software, it's very important. Generally, you always use some other libraries, and you're part of the bigger picture, and it's very important to keep track of that. Because even if you do an audit at instant T and your code is correct, passes the audit, and then the libraries do not have any critical issue at the time of the audit. Maybe T plus 12 months, one of these libraries has some vulnerabilities, and then it gets patched by the upstream developers. But if you don't upgrade at that moment, then you become vulnerable.
Yeah, that's it. And software, nothing's ever perfect. It always goes out of date or gets modified or improved. So yeah, it's very, very hard to keep track of all of that. So just thinking more broadly about the overall view of blockchain and Web3 technology, there are a lot of people who are still on the fence about the impact that it can have in their industry. But what advice would you give to companies or firms that are maybe being somewhat apprehensive about trying to adopt it or work with it?
I think we can see now that these technologies are here to stay. This is my third bear market now, and it's different in the way we don't hear that much talk about, is it dead again? It seems this conversation isn't really happening anymore. In this last cycle, we've seen, for instance, DeFi being quite successful and performing very well during the bear market. So it's something I find really interesting. But then, of course, there are other, it depends on the business, right? So every business has a specific focus. Another thing I found really interesting recently, personally, is how consumer brands and luxury brands, so we have Nike and many high luxury brands entered the NFT space and created their own NFT, or both acquired some NFT startups and made money from that. I think Nike made more than 200 millions from NFT. And it brings a different type of people to this industry, to the economy. So of course, with every big change, there are people who love it and people who hate it. But that's a signal. It's a positive signal. It means that there is something new. There is change. People like it. People don't like it. If some people like it and the others don't care, it's not that big, I believe. So it depends really where the business is coming from. It can feel from the outside. It's a tough industry because there are a lot of scams as well, a lot of failed projects, and it feels risky. But it's also important to experiment and to learn. And depending on the business case, then there are different ways to engage. I think for consumer brands, experimenting with NFT, talking with NFT people is the right way to go. Myself, I'm not that much into that, but I can see it happening. And then there's gaming. Gaming seems to become big now, gaming and blockchain. So that's very interesting. Again, now that the industry is really becoming so big that it's impossible to follow everything. And so if you're a gaming company, I think it's quite important to at least download the biggest games, blockchain games, and experiment with them and learn how it feels, or put some money in it and earn some money or lose some and buy some artifacts in the game and move it to another game. Understand what the users enjoy. Maybe look at Discord as well. We have all these communities now on Discord. You can change the relation with users. You build these communities. You have a business and a community of people around it. So the relation between the business and the users is changing.
And so, do you have a contrarian view about Web3, one that is very different to a lot of other people out there that you can think of?
Well, personally, I like it. What does everybody else think of? I'm not sure. I think it's part of a broader movement of decentralization, right? We decentralize money, we decentralize finance, we decentralize the economy, the digital economy. Some people try to do blockchain supply chain, and there are very important, very big applications there, but it's hard when you mix the real world and the digital and analog, let's say. It's a hard problem in chip as well, the mixed signal, analog and digital, acquiring the signal from the real world, hard disk and wireless antennas. There's a lot of noise, but when you put people in the middle instead of a chip to do the measurements, it's even more difficult because people make mistakes. And then if you have bad data, then it's difficult to deliver a good value out of that. And so I think it's natural that we see Web3 on these digital businesses first, and maybe only. We think of Web3 only if maybe a digital thing, but maybe later in the next cycle, maybe we start to understand how to integrate, interact with blockchain, the digital world, and the real world.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because it is pure software versus when you have the human interface to it, does create some real challenges. So thinking more broadly, though, about the sort of longer 10-year time horizon, how do you envisage that Web3 or blockchain technology will manifest itself in your industry or everyday life?
I think we won't talk about it, right? We've seen Solana is building a phone called the Solana Saga. I think it's very important because to me, at the moment, Web3 doesn't really work. With all these wallets, I find MetaMask difficult to use. So how it is now is painful. It's normal people can't use that now. That's my personal opinion. But this will be solved, and I believe also the UX is happening faster than we think. And so this will disrupt many important digital business models from Web 2. 10 years is a very long time. So first of all, I think we may not really talk about it anymore, but we see personally, what I find very interesting is this: if society changes, the way we organize society, and it's a decentralization of the state, right? And it's very powerful and complex, and it doesn't happen smoothly, smooth transition of power. So there are lots of edge cases. Some are more relevant than others. We see decentralized identity now happening, beginning to happen. Very interesting. And but in 10 years' time, maybe we have a more democratic society, maybe. But on the other hand, we can have a totalitarian society with blockchain, right? With the CBDC, we can see in real time how people are spending their money. This week or last week, we had a PayPal who wanted to fine their user 2,500 USD if they expressed things that PayPal was against, if I understood correctly there, and the PayPal share fell, and PayPal retracted this and said they never wanted to do that, but they sent the email to all their users. So we have very powerful forces here. On one hand, this decentralization paradise, utopia, and then on the other hand, a more totalitarian system with more control of people. And it's really, really hard to say, are we going to left and right? Probably both things happen, and hopefully we will take the best out of it, and the worst will be eliminated.
Absolutely. Hopefully we will find that balance there. So in terms of what you're focusing on now, you mentioned the smart contract audits and the strategy work, but if people want to learn more about your work and reach out to you or whatever else, what are the best ways of doing that? And what would you encourage them to do as a sort of call to action after listening to this episode?
So everybody is always very welcome to send me an email. I'm a bit old school. Jerome@jitadigital.com. Of course, if you just want some background information on the company, visit our website, jitadigital.com. We're adding more content to explain more what we do. And I'm also on Twitter and Telegram, but it's just more efficient for me to manage messages through email.
Cool. And we will provide those links in the show notes as well, just for people listening, so that they don't have to jot it down as you say it there. Well, Jerome, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today, and really great to get some of your perspectives in terms of the parallels as well with regards to auditing and considerations around smart contract security, and the parallels that has with regards to critical system design, doing embedded chips and hardcore hardware engineering too, that you've done in the past. So there's plenty of useful learnings there for our listeners.
Absolutely. It was great to share my experience with you and reflect on the past. And it's not every day that I think about what's going to happen in 10 years. So it took me some time to figure out, but it was a good exercise for me, I think.
That's it. You can only pin these things on, where your mind is currently, right? People's thinking always evolves, but it's fun to hear where they are at a point in time.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Jerome.
Thank you very much, Conor. Bye.
Hi, it's Conor Svensson here again. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'm really excited to share with you that I've written a book, The Blockchain Innovators Handbook, a leader's guide to understanding, adopting and succeeding with this disruptive technology. I've been wanting to share my learnings about blockchain and Web3 for a number of years with a wider audience, and I'm really excited that I can do this now. This book covers everything from the fundamentals of the technology through to opportunity identification and implementation for your business to ensure that you can be one of the big beneficiaries of the wider transition to Web3 that's taking place now. The book is available in physical as well as digital form. For more information, head to web3labs.com/innovators.